Hello, and welcome to the Willow Kids Podcast, a space where curiosity is nurtured, creativity is encouraged, and learning is treated as a lifelong adventure. At Willow Kids, we believe children thrive when education goes beyond memorization, when it invites wonder, builds confidence, and honors each child's unique rhythm of growth. In this podcast, we explore how kids learn best, hear from inspiring educators and parents, and share ideas that support thoughtful, joyful learning in academics, the arts, and life. Whether you're a parent, educator, or lifelong learner, we're glad you're here. Let's grow strong minds and kind hearts together. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and make an announcement. We are excited to share that Willow Kids is officially launching its tutoring pilot program in Calabasas, California. This pilot is designed for families who want something more thoughtful and personalized than traditional tutoring, an approach that supports academic growth while nurturing curiosity, confidence, and a genuine love of learning. If you're a parent in or around Calabasas and interested in learning more, we invite you to visit www.willow.kids to explore the program, see what we're building, and sign up for updates. Spots for the pilot are limited, and we are excited to grow this community together from the ground up. Visit www.willow.kids, and thank you for being part of the Willow Kids journey. Today's podcast, we're going to talk about why do some children with ADHD do better in certain schools. Today, I'm your host, Katelynn. I have a background in child and adolescent development and have worked with kids on and off for the last 7 years. And today I have with me is Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin Harrigan. I'm a child development and elementary specialist with 15 years of experience working with children from preschool to school age.
Thanks for joining us, Erin. I'm excited to talk about how ADHD affects learning.
Me too. It's such a fascinating topic and one that I think is so relevant and important.
Yeah, I want to get started. Before we talk about systems or solutions, I want to start with what families actually see. So when school starts feeling harder for a child with ADHD, what does that look like in everyday life, both academically and emotionally?
Yeah, so in my experience in the classroom, this can show up a great number of ways. I have students who have difficulty sitting in one place, keeping their hands still or to themselves, or taking turns talking. And then they're receiving constant correction for this, and it becomes tiresome for them. So for a child who needs extra stimulus, being asked to sit still and quietly can be very difficult for them, and they might lose focus on the topic at hand because now they're concentrating on keeping their body still, staying quiet. They're trying to ignore all the passing thoughts that are coming through their brains. And it really takes up a lot of their executive functioning. So it's very wearisome for them. So by the end of the day, when they're coming home, they might be extra tired. They might be more prone to having like meltdowns or tantrums. They might even start acting out because of this. And the triggers might be small or even seemingly coming from nowhere because the child has just been, handling this constant struggle throughout the day. So you're looking at children who might be tired and a little bit kind of cranky at the end of the day.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm going to share the study that we're going to be referencing today, how interactions between ADHD and school affect educational achievement. And exactly what Erin was saying is that ADHD has a weaker effect on achievement. And we often see this in the classroom and as kids are going through school. And it's really important to know that ADHD does show up as that chronic unfinished work. It shows up as careless mistakes, which are then thought to be inattention. And so, as Erin was saying, it's really important to realize that our schools aren't necessarily built for the kids. And I just wanted to point that out as Erin was talking about.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Katelynn, because especially with topics that might not be of interest for a person with ADHD, it's so hard for them to focus on it. And it's not just like, I don't like this, so I don't want to do it. It's more like, I'm not interested in this, therefore I cannot focus on it. It's an inability. It's not just a preference. It's really going down to the core of how their brain is working, and that can really start affecting their academic achievement.
Yeah, and research, including the article that I just shared, shows that it's not about intelligence. It's about those ADHD symptoms and how they are interfering with sustained attention and task completion. And it's why it's such an issue in the schools, because schools heavily reward sustained attention and task completion, whereas ADHD symptoms don't allow that to happen. And so exactly like you said, once a kid loses that focus or doesn't not loses focus, isn't interested in it, there's no focus for them to maintain.
Absolutely.
I loved how you said that because I think it's a very important part that everyone seems to forget about.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people, especially someone with no experience with ADHD, they don't have it, they don't know anyone with it from the outside. There can be quite a bit of judgment for it because they're like, well, okay, everyone has to do things that they don't want to do, but it's on such a deeper level that they might not see.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So if it's not just the child, but the environment, what if it's not the child, but it's more of the environment shaping the outcome?
I think that's definitely a huge factor. Environment plays a big role in how students or individuals with ADHD are able to function. And I think we'll probably get even deeper into that as we go. But yes, definitely environment has a huge role.
Okay, so since we do see that environment is having a huge role, if some schools are simply a better fit for children with ADHD than others, what are some specific signs parents should look for when they're trying to find a good fit for them?
I think that one thing that parents might not think to look for in a school is access to outdoors and outdoor space. Students with ADHD often benefit greatly from being outside, and they need to connect their bodies through motion and contact and energy. So, running and playing outside gives them the extra stimuli that they might need to recharge. And being outside doesn't just have to be for playtime. I think that schools that utilize their outdoor space for learning time are highly beneficial as well. So, a student that might have difficulty paying attention in a classroom with artificial lighting might do better outside where there's nature sounds and they can feel the sun and the wind on their skin and they're getting that extra contact on their bodies and receiving extra information to help them be able to give focus where it needs to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. Outside is such a great help. And while it can help some kids, sometimes it does hinder others. I think some additional things that parents could look for is like a flexible pacing rather than like a rigid curriculum. Would you see in that outdoor or play based environment that you were talking about? You can see that kids, like, if it's not like we say here, we do this, it has to be from this time to this time. And it's like, oh, maybe today we'll take a stroll and find out this way. So I really liked how you brought that up. And I also think that parents should also look for teachers who are trained in executive functioning differences, because if they're trained in seeing that executive functioning is not the same across the board, parents are able to see that those teachers are more willing or more likely to help those kids.
Absolutely. And going back to the flexibility that you were talking with, I think that that is a crucial component. There's a balance between having a reliable, dependable routine and allowing for adaptability when things aren't going the way that you want them to be or when students are struggling. You want to be able to have a school that is able to balance standardizing what children are required to learn at their grade
Mhm.
level and supporting creative approaches on how students can achieve those standards. So allowing even teachers to have autonomy with how they create their curriculum based on their students, I think is really important. So like if you're coming into tourist school and there's nothing but like ditto sheets, or I don't know if they even still call them that, but the worksheets that are all exactly the same and there's nothing but cookie cutter art, maybe that's an indicator that that school is looking for their students to fit into a specific shape rather than displaying work that shows creativity where students can really take what they've learned and apply it through their own skills creatively.
Yeah, I love that. And you actually see schools that don't use those cookie cutter things and aren't looking for those modes, that they tend to offer early intervention more likely than a school with those molds. And so if you can see those early interventions in your school rather than a wait and see method, you're going to get way better results.
I think that's so true, Katelynn. And to add to that too, I think, when you're speaking with school administration, looking to see what kinds of specialists they have, whether it's school counselors or special education professionals, it takes a team. Teachers are fantastic. Teachers wear a lot of hats, and it's important for them to have knowledge about ADD and ADHD and executive functioning. And they also need that support and that teamwork between other professionals and the parents.
Yeah, I completely agree. Why do you think kids who have difficulty with attention tend to impact their grades more than their hyperactivity, even though hyperactivity is way more obvious than the attention is.
I think you just hit it when you said it's way more obvious. A student who is hyperactive, you're going to notice them. They're going to be maybe louder than their peers, or they're moving around a lot, fidgeting, moving their chairs, falling out of chairs. There's just a lot of attention on it versus a child who is struggling with inattention in that moment is often going to be a lot more quiet, and it's a little bit of a less visible symptom of ADHD. And something that comes to mind with that is I think many of us can relate to like reading a paragraph, realizing you weren't paying attention, and then needing to read it over again. But that's something that students with ADHD are experiencing over and over and over. And it happens really quietly, and it's happening during large group school lessons, independent classwork, and homework. And they're just really having a hard time engaging. And it can be easy to miss. I know I can think of being a classroom teacher, and I'm making my rounds around the room, and I eventually get to a student who has nothing done on their paper, not even their name. And I'm asking the student, hey, what's going on? A lot of times they're even just surprised as you, like they had no clue that 15 minutes went by where they did nothing because they were just unable to kick themselves into gear and get going. And it's like I said, I know I keep repeating it, but it's a very quiet process.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to recognize that and look for those kinds of signs in order to catch them. And if you don't have experience yet or you're not knowledgeable yet, it can be really easy to miss.
Yeah. And the study goes along with exactly what you said. It literally says that like the inattention symptoms are so much more strongly linked to academic achievement than hyperactivity because schools are rewarding that sustained attention. They're rewarding your multi-step instruction following, your writing endurance, your working memory and or your quiet task completion as you brought up like why didn't you do anything in the last 15 minutes? Because you don't realize that like those quiet strugglers go unnoticed. They're not because you don't always have the time to look around and see like, oh, you didn't do anything. Like, how can I help you refocus or whatnot? And so it's really important that you can see that like grades measure that sustained cognitive regulation. And that's why it's impacting more than that hyperactivity because the energy or the creativity is not being measured in school anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Something that came to mind while you were speaking on that as well is class sizes, I think can definitely have an impact. So when you have, a small private school that you're able to have 15 children or less, then you can kind of catch those things maybe a little bit more quickly because the teacher has less students to focus on versus a class of 25 to sometimes even 35 students. It's a lot. And especially if you have multiple students with ADHD, it's challenging for a teacher to be able to see, to notice, and to then give that support to that student in the moment.
Yeah. So if schools can shrink or widen a gap, what responsibility does that create?
I mean, I think as educators, the success of the student is on you. It's definitely a two-part system. You need the child to work with you for sure, and you need the families to work with you. But as educators, we're the ones with the training and the background. So I think a lot of the weight is also carried on us to help support those students. And if we're unable to, then to find the support that we can get for them.
Right. So in your professional experience, what does the school system most often unintentionally do to make things harder for students with ADHD?
One thing I think is training. I think even from personal experience, I most recently came from a pretty progressive school that had extensive professional development. And even we weren't offered that much training on children with diverse learning needs and ADHD specifically, especially. So I think it's really important to help give teachers that training because ADHD, the knowledge about it, the study of it has come such a long way, even from when I first started college to where I am now.
Hmm.
We've learned so much. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of teachers and other types of educators might be running on old information or even no information. I think In today's world, it's amazing that I think most people are aware of ADHD and some things that they can do to support, but it still might be a little outdated. So I think if schools can offer more professional development to, at the very least, help teachers recognize certain behaviors so that they can reach out for help when they need it, that's definitely an area of growth.
Yeah. And I liked how you said that, like, you guys are working on old information or you're working with certain expectations in place. Like, the school system wasn't designed for neurodiversity in mind. Like, it wasn't created for that. It was only thought of a neurotypical student.
Yes. And that makes me think of too, even just classroom structure, how the classroom is set up in terms of the time and the scheduling, but also physically. If you think about, what an elementary classroom or middle school or high school classroom looks like, it's often set up in maybe one or two set ways across the board. All of the desks are in a row and facing forward, or maybe there are a couple of clumps of tables where students can work together, which I think is a step forward even, but
Mhm.
there's so much to explore in that. In my own classroom, when I was a classroom teacher, I tried to have an area for students to gather for large group instruction. But then when it came time for students to work, they had options to sit at a large table with a bigger number of students, or to sit at a smaller table with a smaller number of students, or to sit in pairs, or even sit alone. And I even had lap desks so that students could work on the floor and do their work there. And I think that just gives so much range for students to find what's working for them. And I would talk to them too, because, they're kids and sometimes they want to pick whatever looks fun. But
Yes.
I would speak with them and say, is this environment really working for you, or what do you think would work best for you? And they will answer honestly, and they'll say, actually, I think it'd be better if I work alone, or I really would like to work with my friend because they help me a lot. Giving, even just giving the different options of seating is something that's huge that might be difficult for some larger classes to implement, but it really does go a long way.
Yeah. Well, you're offering them executive function support rather than behavior focused responses. So you're trying to meet them where they're at versus forcing them into this box. And that's exactly what you see from most schools. And we are getting closer or in a step in the correct direction of like supporting that executive function. But you do see a lot of traditional classrooms are behavior focused, or they don't know how to handle the kid that won't stop with all the outbursts, or won't stop goofing around, or the class count. And so I love that you even brought up the fact that they have opportunities to work on the floor, work in pairs, or work by themselves, or in big groups. Because it's true, some kids need those options. Like, I remember being a student in school and like I had to work alone with certain subjects, and other subjects I was like, if I was alone, I can't do it. And so, like, just realizing that that is all brains. All brains need something, and they're not all the same.
Absolutely, Caitlin. And that just reminds me too, just on a personal level, I'm thinking even back to when I was in school and I was assessed for ADHD, and they didn't end up giving me a diagnosis. And I have yet to go back in my adulthood to look for one, but I can definitely recognize so many areas that show signs and symptoms. I mean, I can see why I was assessed for sure. And I think that even just some tweaks in the classroom or tweaks in how professionals were looking for it at the time. I mean, at this point, it was a long time ago and information's changed a lot about how we diagnose even girls with ADHD, or how we diagnose those quieter symptoms. Um, so that early recognition and the setup of the classroom is, I think, just something that has improved a lot. Like you said, we're taking steps, and I hope we keep taking those steps forward.
Yeah, I really hope so too, as it's super necessary. So then, when you see a child struggling in school because of ADHD, many parents tend to wonder, like, did I do something wrong? Is it my fault? What is something that you'd want those parents to understand?
I mean, ADHD is a multifaceted disorder and it has so many contributing factors, and you are not a bad parent if your child has ADHD. I think that parents hold a lot of guilt for way too many things. And I just, I imagine parenthood is one of the most rewarding, but also one of the hardest jobs out there. The first and foremost to parents, don't be so hard on yourself. This is not your fault. And now you can shift your focus to what positive changes you can make, right? Because, there might also be that guilt of not being able to catch it sooner or not being able to see it. Why didn't I see this at home? But student behavior at home versus in the school can vary pretty widely also. Maybe you're doing an excellent job parenting at home, so your student isn't exhibiting as many of those symptoms when they're at home because they're able to get the stimulus that they need from you and they're able to feel safe and nurtured and comfortable with you. And then at school, all of a sudden there's a bunch of kids around and they might feel overwhelmed and those behaviors and symptoms start arising. So if you didn't catch it earlier as just a parent yourself, maybe that's an indicator that your child feels really safe and comfortable and loved. Now moving forward, I think just the biggest picture is to support your child knowing that they have this challenge, speak up for them with the teachers and the school, create dependable routines that they can follow, and just love them. I mean, at the end of the day, I think children with ADHD may feel especially vulnerable or even guilty about the challenges that they face every day. So they really need that reassurance that they're whole and that they're loved and they're safe.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Those children just need that extra love, that extra support. And like, as Erin said, like, it's not your fault. It is not the parents' fault. You are doing your best that you can. And the study gives a lot of reassurance to parents about that as well. It is a neurodevelopmental thing. It is not just something that occurs. It is in your brain and it's not caused by poor parenting. And parents do not create ADHD, but they do help shape the environment around it and how to support their kids, which is, as Erin was saying, why you don't see it as much in the home versus the school typically, because you're their mom, you're their dad, you're their caregiver. You know what works for your kid and you're doing it at home. Whereas they don't have that same level of understanding in the school system.
Yeah, I agree. And, for the most part, parents also don't have the background knowledge that educators have. So I think maybe some guilt comes from that as well, of just not knowing how, maybe they are seeing behaviors, but they don't know how to handle them. And, the great thing is that now you can take that first step to learn about it, but to not be hard on yourself for not knowing the things that you don't know. You can't know things that you just don't know. It's not a part, learning about ADHD is not a part of what we learn as a society going through school. So there's just, there's going to be a learning curve and that's okay. And give yourself some grace.
Yeah. I think something else that parents can control is that emotional safety, or is that creating those predictable routines to kind of help them while they're at home. Even having strengths focused conversations like, yeah, you struggle with math, like it's hard for you to sit down and focus, but you're really good when you're playing baseball, or you're really good when we're working on science experiments. And so just like kind of changing that conversation and taking away the, well, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, or you're bad at this, and turning it into what are you good at? That really helps just even building their self-esteem when the school is so good at kind of tearing you down unintentionally.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, Katelynn, because I can think of examples and it just warms my heart when I hear a student say, well, this part doesn't warm my heart. If someone's saying like, oh, you're not good at XYZ thing. But then when I hear that student say, yeah, but I am good at ABC, it's like, it's so heartwarming to know that they're getting that love and support from someone in their life that's giving them that self-confidence within their inner voice.
Yeah, it definitely plays such a huge role. And as a developmentalist and as someone who works so closely with kids in their development, like we often get so focused on, you got to hit this milestone, this is what's next, this is what next. And then just remembering to reframe, like, you're doing amazing where you are. And sure, there's room to grow, but we're going to get there when we get there is such an important thing to remember.
I agree.
So beyond grades and policies, what do you think this means for a child's lives? Why, or how does early school support shape how a child with ADHD sees themselves?
Yeah, I mean, early school is so important because that's when a child's brain is developing the most. I mean, especially ages 0 through 5, but even beyond that, children are learning and growing and developing so much early on. And parents, educators, we are giving them their inner voice. Our voice is becoming their inner voice. So having that in mind and knowing that we're helping to shape them as they grow is something to take really, really seriously. I think, especially as an educator, we want to take that really seriously. Students with ADHD, I've mostly worked with children preschool to school age, early school age, but I've worked with children of all ages. And it's so hard to hear a teenager that suffers from ADHD that that they've had a bad experience with school because they've got lower self-esteem, either overall lower self-esteem or especially lower self-esteem within a certain academic skill. Oftentimes they have low success with that skill, and it's kind of like a loop. The confidence affects their performance affects their confidence. So when you're not getting that support early on and those skills start to suffer and suffer and suffer, the confidence goes down and down and down. And it's something that then it can be unlearned, but it's a harder process at an older age than if we were to intervene early and step in and start to make changes at a younger age.
I completely agree because you're exactly right. It's so hard to unteach those patterns the older you are. And so like early intervention, kids are developing like the thought of like, I can figure this out. They're building confidence from small academic wins. They're making the effort meaningful instead of humiliating. And so that early support really does build those. And as an older kiddo, like it is so hard to unteach those things because they're already so stuck. It's already their foundation.
Right. And I think you kind of touched on this a little bit too, but to even go further, learning about process praise and growth mindset, I think is really essential, especially for children with ADHD, because I've encountered a lot of students that have this that don't have a growth mindset and they get so stuck. I'm not good at. It's not like I need to practice this skill or I'll get better with practice. It's just a straight, oh no, I'm not good at that. Or even so hard. I've had students that are like, I'm just dumb. I'm not smart. I
Mm.
can't do this because I'm not smart. And they're so set in that fixed mindset because they maybe haven't gotten the support that they needed. And it's really heartbreaking. But with appropriate support, students will build those skills and that confidence over time. And it's harder to do at an older age, but it's absolutely possible to do at, I believe, any age, whether that's childhood or even adult. I've definitely had some things that I had to unlearn and relearn
Mhm.
as an adult as well. And it's a process, but there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel that it can be done. I think the really important thing that we can be supporting students with ADHD is, not just help with certain skills. I think that like academic skills, which I think is very, very important, but also supporting them in their time management skills, their study habits, their ability to prioritize tasks and organize themselves. Those are things that students with ADHD struggle with immensely. And just like any other strength or skill or topic, it's something that can be strengthened with practice. So it's not just something, some people think, well, I'm just not an organized person. Well, you can be if you practice. You have to put the work in, and having support to do that. If you're someone that has ADHD, then that's really going to do wonders because it's not something that maybe comes naturally. It's something that has to be worked on to develop.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if a caregiver or educator focuses on that growth mindset instead of those labels, they're able to support the kid a lot more, even if they don't have the time. Instead of saying, "Why are you so bad at math?" Being like, "I can't wait to work on this with you." And just letting them know, like, it's achievable. Anything you set your mind to is achievable, and you don't need to make that ceiling for yourself. And if the educator can kind of exemplify that and model it, the kid is going to pick it up so easy, whether they're 5 or 17.
Absolutely. And I think that even kind of ties in with something you were saying earlier is when children are struggling with something that's really hard for them, I really like to focus on something that they're good at that they had to work at. So, okay, this math problem is really hard for you to understand and to break down. But remember when you didn't know how to hold a baseball bat properly and now you can hit a home run every single game? You had to practice it. And just like that, we're going to practice math and you're going to get better in no time. And really like leaning into their strengths and using their strengths to kind of help them to build their confidence, I think can go a long way.
Yeah, and I love how you brought up strengths because it leads us into our next topic. Like, what strengths do you often see in children with ADHD that have like traditional report cards that don't always measure up to the neurotypical expectations?
Yeah, absolutely. Kids with ADHD are so awesome at so many things. So, there might be this inattention portion of ADHD, but something that kind of goes hand in hand is like this hyper attention on the things that they love. So they can become really passionate about the things that they love. And it's so fun to listen to them because of their high energy and they just like suck you into it too. And all of a sudden now I'm a football fan when I didn't know how, anything about it 5 minutes ago. So I think just their passion for life or for, whatever it is that they're interested in is something that's so incredible about students with ADHD. They might also have a higher risk tolerance because maybe they're seeking that external stimulus. They're willing to like push for it. Some students with ADHD are exceptionally talented at a certain sport or they're very agile because they are connected with their bodies so much more and they just really lean into that connection. They're the ones that are maybe climbing the trees a little bit too high or outrunning all of their classmates in a race, things like that, that I think are really incredible.
Yeah.
And creativity. I can think of this one student comes to mind who is one of the most creative students I have ever met in my whole life. And at our last school, the students had swimming for outdoor education when the weather was nice. And one day he just turned to me in the middle of class. I guess he was thinking about swimming at that time as his mind was wandering and drifting. And he turned to me and he said, I feel really bad for the kids that can't use their imagination. Because if you think about it, like when they're swimming, they're just like splashing. But when I'm in the water, I'm on a pirate ship and I have to walk the plank and there's sharks and there's mermaids. And I just think that's like a lot more fun. And I was like, you know what? I think I agree with you. That does sound really fun to live in your brain.
Yeah. And it really exemplifies that, like, the strength of an ADHD or someone with ADHD is they're so innovative. They have these rapid ideas just constantly going, and the creativity is flowing, and they have the energy and the drive, and it's just fascinating to see how their brains work. Like, I have so many people in my life who have ADHD, and I'm like, "Oh, we're hyper focusing right now," and they're like, "Yes, you wanna join me?" And I'm like, "Sure, let's go for the ride." And next thing I know, like, we are in some mystified, like, I don't know, like, someone created this really cool I was, like, very generic thinking, and I was like, "Oh, I want, like, an ocean theme," and they're like, "We can make it a space ocean theme," and they're flying through, like, the Milky Way, and I'm like, "That sounds amazing," but, like, if you, like, sit with them and, like, just allow their brains to run, like, you'll see that cognitive domain is just on rapid fire versus a neurotypical who's stuck in an ocean theme, and so it's really important to celebrate those strengths as well.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're talking about like being innovative and stuff too. I'm thinking of like we had this school fair and we had two students that one with diagnosed ADHD, one not sure, but some signs, and they come together and they made it was like one of the coolest things that we saw at the fair. It was a school fair where you could create a project to sell. So there were students that everything that everyone created was amazing and incredible, but you had students that made t-shirts with a little design on them or hats with a design or beaded bracelets. And then you had these two students who made these surprise smash rocks. So they put like a little toy or a prank or a piece of paper or even nothing inside coffee grounds and mud and they like let it dry. And these sold these things like hotcakes. Like everyone wanted them because they wanted to know what's the mystery inside my rock. So they just sold They sold out completely, and we had smashed rocks all outside of the campus because of this amazing idea that these two students were able to create together.
Well, that's amazing. And it just goes to speak to that innovation and the entrepreneurial thinking. Like, it is so cool to see.
Yeah, they're honestly magnetic, I think, to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So then for children who tend to struggle early, but then later found the right support for themselves, what do you see change over time?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that we've kind of touched on is their confidence. When a student has that early support and they have that confidence in themselves where they can look at something that's challenging but know that they can take it on, there's the sky is the limit. There's nothing that they can't do. So just that confidence boost just means wonders for them.
I love that you brought that up because it's true. Like, once they have that confidence boost, a lot of things start to change. Their academic skills catch up, their independence grows, they form study habits that work for them. You see their school related stress start to decrease. They're not like, oh my gosh, I'm so bad at this and I have a D here or a C there. They actually can complete their work, they want to complete their work. And I think the biggest one for me is that you see a lot of behavioral conflict start to decrease. You don't have the kids fighting so hard for themselves because they have support. They have someone fighting for them.
Yeah, I love the way that you said that, Caitlin. Absolutely. I agree 100%.
I think it's also important to like once oh my gosh, trajectory shifts, like you can see that because the study brings out how genetics play a role. So even with support, like genetics don't always stand a chance. Like you have support. So just because you are genetically predisposed to something doesn't mean it's gonna happen. And so like I thought that was also really cool, like to even mention.
Totally. I don't think I was even thinking of that portion, but now that you're saying it, I mean, it's just like anything else. People are born taller and shorter and they adjust and they accommodate and they have different skills and strengths. And the same goes for someone with ADHD. If you can learn to adapt with your skills and find ways to make things work, then the world can be your oyster or, at least a lot more accessible than without those coping mechanisms.
What options do you have available? So what if like changing schools isn't an option or money is tight? What type of outside resources can parents look for to help their child with ADHD succeed academically?
Yeah, I mean, the first starting place that I have always gone to when I was a classroom teacher was having parents go to their child's pediatrician. This was for us as a private school, this was our first step in looking to get the children assessed because they have the information to, kind of direct and they might be able to help give some language to that as well. So that's definitely one of the starting points. And then within the school counselors, directors, and sometimes teachers as well are able to give parents information of where to start. So I think the beginning of that process is finding out, does my child have ADHD? And once you have that information, then I think it kind of opens and unlocks some doors for some support that you might not otherwise have. The way that school systems are set up, as educators, we can provide a lot of differentiation, but, especially when there's a diagnosis, now there's like a team that really helps support. That's part of the infrastructure. You can ask your child's teacher or, anyone in administration about individualized education plans or IEPs and ask them what are the steps moving forward. You'll be a part of meetings where you can be your child's voice and their advocate to tell schools and administrators, this is what I'm seeing. This is what my child needs. I want to see more of this. I want the help in this way for my child. And finding that space where you can be a voice. Local libraries are another place to go. A lot of libraries have either information or they have information on community programs. Some of them even offer free tutoring or certain, kids classes or teen programs. So libraries can be a huge asset to parents and absolutely, online support groups, social media support groups, online threads, things like that. Just make sure, I would say with that, I know I have a friend who sometimes finds that some of those support groups might lean one way or the other, and then she ends up saying, well, am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? So but take everything with a grain of salt and really go into it the mind of looking for support and not looking for shame. But yeah, I mean, the internet is a wealth of knowledge and information. So when you find trusted educational websites or podcasts, then that can be a great place for parents.
But yeah, I completely agree. I think having those online resources help. I think if you're stuck and one side's leaning too far to this side or one and you're not sure, I think online ADHD parent groups, like educational parent groups, are even good because now you're educating yourself on what's going on in your kid's head and you can make those decisions for yourself because you are your child's best advocate. You know your child the best. I also really liked how you brought up IEP, the individualized educational plan, because people hear IEP and they're like, oh no, like something's wrong with my kid. And it's really important to know that an IEP or a 504 plan is really just set and tailored to support your kid. It can give your kid more time to take a test. It can give them a quiet area to take a test without all those distractions. I know as a kid, I needed one. I had to go to a different class because that person tapping their pencil or spinning their hair, I was like, "Ooh, what are they doing? Ooh, what are they doing?" And so having a school-based service like an IEP or 4 gives your kid the best environment they need to succeed in school, whether it's 10 more minutes, whether it's taking the test in another classroom, whether it's being able to retake a test. So I just wanted to really like hit that one on the head. Like they are not a bad thing. If anything, they boost up the quality of their school life so much more.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Caitlin, because I think sometimes that can be scary as a parent to receive a diagnosis or to get this thing that this IEP or 504 that feels really official. And they're like, oh no, there's something wrong with my child. And it kind of goes maybe even back to some of that guilt
Yes.
that they might experience. When in reality, it's like, it's a great thing because who wouldn't want more support for their children, you know? And I think if you can make that shift in your mindset of, oh, my child is going to get so much extra support that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. This is great for my child. They're going to be so successful. We're really going to set them up for success. And I think it's an important mind shift.
Yeah, I love that. So at home, because we've talked a lot about the school, but what do you think about at home? What small daily shifts can make school feel more manageable with a kid with AD?
I mean, to make school more manageable, I think even just having discussions with your child, like what we were talking about strengths, talking about challenges, talking about how we can build those things. But, even just supporting them at home where they can be home and recharge, I think is really important as well. Creating simple daily routines that your child can follow is a great starting place. Putting that up where you guys can both see it and go over it. Maybe you can view it in the morning, like, okay, so for this portion, you're going to be at school. What things are you going to do to set yourself up for success at school? And even having that conversation in the morning as you go over your schedule is great. When they come home, they have something reliable. And again, goes hand in hand with that flexibility and adaptability to change it if necessary, but something that they can rely on for the regular day-to-day things. And I would say to even go a step further to make that schedule with your child to help them take ownership and accountability, because maybe something that you think should take them 15, 20 minutes is something that's really overwhelming for them, and they need to have some scheduled breaks, or they need some time to like mentally prepare for it beforehand. So getting their input is going to help them be a lot more successful when creating that environment for themselves as well.
Yeah.
And then kind of going back to, things that teachers can do in the classroom are things that parents can do at home too. And when you are designating a comfortable space for your child to work productively on their homework, it's really important. And maybe you have option. Would you prefer to sit on the living room floor and do homework, or is the temptation of the TV too distracting? Or, maybe they want to do their work outside and when the weather's nice, or maybe they want to work at the kitchen table while you're cooking dinner so that you can help keep them accountable, and you're there to answer questions as needed. So really kind of working with your child to find what spaces within your home work for them, I think is very important as well.
Yeah, collaboration with the child should always be the forefront of any solution you're looking for. Because, especially when it comes to academic success with neurodivergent or ADHD in this case, if you don't have that collaboration, the child's gonna feel forced and it's gonna be even harder to manage it. And so just kind of putting those daily protective factors in while both of you are in agreement, like, yes, this is our routine. Yes, I need a visual schedule. Yes, let's do a timer because you set a 15-minute timer and I think it's only been 5 minutes, but you showed me it's 15 minutes. So now I know, okay, yes, now I need to get started. So just kind of having those in place are so beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that a lot of kids and adults with ADHD struggle with is that time management portion. So the timers can be really helpful because they don't always know what time feels like because, maybe on a preferred task, the time is flying faster. Or on a non-preferred task, it's excruciatingly long, so you don't always have that reference of how long something is taking. And even with that too, you could go if time isn't working, if you're looking forward to the next break on this task, how about we get through the next 3 problems and then take a break? So it doesn't always have to be time focused, it can be task focused too. You answer these 3 questions, then you can go and, get a snack or go play outside for a bit or, whatever the case is, whatever's working for you, then yeah, that can work as well.
Yeah, I love that you said that because it is important to, like, just to even put that thought in there so you can just think about it, because sometimes it's not something we all think about, and so just being able to be like, "Okay, alright, I could do that," because you're learning with your kid. You and your kid are learning and navigating life together, and that's also a really important thing to remember.
Absolutely. And something I want to go even like a little bit deeper into as well. I think I mentioned like having like a reward. I do want to speak to that a little bit because I think some parents feel hesitant to
Yes.
reward children because they're feeling like they're bribing them or maybe they're feeling judged by other parents because they believe that children should just do their work because they need to. And it's so much deeper than that. And so, like, I want to make it clear some people are intrinsically motivated, meaning that they do something because they simply believe they should, or that it's the right thing to do, or it's expected, or maybe they're even just compelled to do it. But many individuals, especially children with ADHD, are externally motivated, meaning they need a reward, a treat, a special game to play at their favorite park, just like some kind of carrot at the end of a stick to help keep them motivated. And it's unfortunate that this is judged sometimes by people with that bias. People who are intrinsically motivated might carry a bias like that. Well, you're bribing them, you're rewarding them for their bad behavior or, whatever. I just have to say, well, oh well, it's unfortunate that you think that way. At the end of the day, as you've said, Katelynn, you know your child the best. You know what helps motivate them. You know what helps build them up and strengthen them. And, you know how to handle your child and how to help them succeed the best.
Yeah, and you're right. It's important to celebrate effort, not just the outcome. And I think that's what a lot of intrinsical motivation teaches you to do. It teaches you to celebrate outcome, not effort. And so with ADHD, it's important to celebrate effort, not outcome, because the effort is what the kid's putting in, and they're trying so hard, and they're trying to do this and that, and work with this and this and this. And so just being like, hey, like, I see you. I saw how hard that was, and I'm really proud. I know we didn't finish, but you did more than half of it. Like, that's great. That's a start.
Right. And that even goes back to some of the IEP discussions too, is like maybe some of the IEPs help you to break down assignments where they don't have to complete this thing that's going to take them 3 hours to do,
Yes.
but still shows demonstration of the skills.
Yes.
I just wanted to touch on that. A little off topic, but relating back to what
No,
we
super,
said.
super important. I think it's really important, like, the study that we keep referencing, it really had 3 powerful messages for me. It was academic struggles, with ADHD is not about intelligence, that genetics play a role, but your environment matters, and that identity kind of the identity outcomes is more important than a GPA, and knowing that you're building a whole human. You're building your whole child and the person you're caring for. Like, it's so much more important that their self-esteem and who they think they are as a person is in the forefront over a GPA. They don't need a 4.0. A 3.3 is great. Something that's passing and they're showing that they're doing their best.
Yeah, I agree, Caitlin. And to add to that too, I just want to go back to the parent aspect to just breathe and like take everything one day or even one moment at a time. Parents are human. They're allowed to feel overwhelmed, and it's part of the process. But I hope that parents can, remember to give themselves grace and know that the best and most important they can do is just love their children. And that's something that parents are really, really good at. So if you're loving your child, you're already doing wonders.
Yeah. And I think that maybe the question isn't how we fix ADHD, it's how do we build environments where it can thrive.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for spending time with us on the Willow Kids podcast. If today's conversation sparked a new idea, gave you reassurance, or simply made you pause and reflect, we'd love for you to carry that into your week and into the lives of the children you support. You can learn more about Willow Kids, upcoming programs, and our growing community by visiting us online. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing or sharing it with someone who cares deeply about education and childhood growth. Until next time, keep nurturing curiosity, keep asking thoughtful questions, and remember, strong roots grow lifelong learners.